Morning from Pacific Island Fisheries Group. My name is Alex Min. I'm here with Clayward Tam from PIFG, and we have quite a few other fishers and community members online at this time. We're fortunate today to be answering some of the questions and comments we heard throughout our work with the Western Pacific Regional Fishery Management Council this past year on funding and where does funding go to fishermen. Alongside that, we're very fortunate. We have Richard Yamada, who is alongside Clay Tam, a lifelong advocate for fishermen and fishing communities, who's going to present on his career in grant writing. He's well known from the Hawaii residents as owning and running Shelter Lodge up in Alaska, as well as maybe less known, but also incredible for his advocacy work for our fisheries and for the fishing community in Alaska. So that being said, again, thank you all for joining. If you don't mind, just drop a quick chat of your name and where you're from in the message if you can find it. If not, no worries. That's just going to cover down so people can see. I know we have folks from Hawaii, Guam, American Samoa, Lindsay over on Molokai, and then some other folks from different islands. So again, thanks all for joining us, making the time to be here. It'll be recorded for future references. And our presentation today is US Pacific Island Fisheries Opportunities, Funding in the Future. So really what we want to start with explaining is what we've heard is there's a lot of challenges and gaps across our fisheries in the region. And fishing communities often can't access funding or support for these existing and known issues they're facing. So our work this past year under the Western Pacific Regional Fishery Management Council took us throughout the region to listen to the communities, their concerns. We met with about 600 attendees through 35 meetings. We collected a lot of comments, probably close to 700 comments from these communities, from Guam to CNMI to American Samoa to the Hawaii communities. And so what we were hearing are region-wide systemic issues in fishing on access infrastructure as well as other challenges. So that's what we want to bring up today, and we want to just talk briefly about our work before we get into the future and funding opportunities. So we were asked by fishers from almost every community we engaged with, where does funding come from and how and where do we look to access it? So again, we have both Clay Tam and Richard Yamada, longtime fishermen advocates that have both successfully accessed funding to support community needs. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what kind of grants exist, where do they come from, and why are certain projects funded versus others not. And we want to illuminate this for fishing communities throughout the region. So through our work with the Western Pacific Regional Fishery Management Council, we just launched our new website, Voices of Pacific Island Fishing Communities, that showcases the community voices. The work is still being updated and a work in progress, but we encourage you to go look at that and check it out. It includes the reports from this past year, challenges and gaps, as well as action items that are being tracked. Some related to governance, some related to infrastructure, and others community needs and concerns. That's a great place to start with reaching for grant funding to address needs and reaching for assistance in your projects and ideas because it's recorded, it's reported on, and it's a tangible outcome from coming to these meetings that fishers can say and take with them and say, hey, like, this is a concern here. We need to address that. Here's a report showcasing what that was brought up and why. So I encourage you to check that out. It's fishtoday.org, and it's under the first Island Fisheries tab, Pacific Island Fishing Voices at the very bottom. So today we want to share some of the knowledge about our fisheries and then hear from successful fishermen who have completed grant projects, Richard Yamada and Clayward Tam, and then discuss any ways to look to support thriving fishing opportunities in the future. So again, thank you everyone who joined us. I think we have about 18 participants. And so if you didn't get a chance, drop your name and where you're from in the chat already. So what is a grant? It's really a financial assistance award that helps support a project that is for good purposes and authorized by law. The recipient could be a fisherman, it could be an organization, and that person has substantial control over the funding and the outcomes of the project. So it's not like saying NOAA's getting this money or the science is getting this money and then they're going to pay you as a fisherman to go out. This is you're running the project, you're executing it, and you're achieving the objectives and outcomes. And so grant funding, really just a brief overview. Where does it come from? It comes oftentimes from the federal government, state territorial government, local counties, foundations, philanthropic funds, and others. Some common terms we hear in Hawaii, like Hawaii Community Foundation is a giver of funds. Counties also have grants and RFPs. And then when we look to the larger federal opportunities, like the Saltonstall Kennedy Fund is one that comes up a lot and be discussed today. And then there's some others as well. And so why do grants exist? For exactly the reasons listed below. It might be something that might not be profitable, but really needed in the community. It might be too risky or too early stage, or it might not just benefit you as a company, but might benefit all the fishers in the community or in your region. So, for example, like marketing might be one where a promotion of a certain seafood species is going to benefit all the fishers. So that's an example, but this is why grants exist, really to meet the needs of the communities that might not be funded or filled by government, for-profit, or other business entities. And so just where to start looking if you're going to look for grants. Grants.gov is a great place to start. I comb this website quite regularly using keywords such as fishing, seafood, ocean, reef, several others. They might not all apply to your opportunity or what you're looking for, but this is a great place to start and to read and to learn a little bit more about what exists. And you just search grants.gov. And then so just some sample ideas that we think about and we've been thinking through this past year include, fisheries development projects, safety training, gear modifications, FAD opportunities, school lunch programs, marketing, and education. I have that picture where the shark depredated that small sheepy. Again, that's a priority for the region. So really thinking about what's the gap, what's the need, and what are the priorities. And so just three quick resources and funding, I guess four now, I just add one. Funding opportunities that have existed historically, we hope will continue to exist in the future, as well as expand. And I know Richard will talk a little bit more about this in depth, but the top three I wanted to share: NOAA Saltonstall Kennedy Grant, which is a $11 million annual competition. Uh, about 40 projects are selected out of 150 to 200 that apply. And this includes marketing, infrastructure, and research. The caveat, it didn't happen in 2025. So just that's one note. It didn't happen this past year, but has historically happened every year as long as there's funding, which is mandated. The next one is the USDA Value Added Producer Grant. This just ended April 2020, 22nd. But it's a 25 million annual competition. They offer two phases, one for planning, up to 50,000, and then the other 250,000 for commercialization. So I've seen a couple companies in Hawaii, not fishing specific, get this, but like some of the produce companies have received this funding, including the 250,000. One caveat, you must be a harvester, so you must be the fisherman to apply for this grant. Not to say you can't hire other people to help you and do the work, but you have to be an actual harvester or fisherman. And the match required is 1-to-1. So if you're doing planning grant to test feasibility of an idea, you would have to match 50,000 with 50,000 of your own funding. They can also be in kind and they encourage fishers to apply, but this is a great opportunity as well that has continued annually. And then just one final one from Sea Grant, which is another part of NOAA, is the Young Fishers Development Grant. It's been 1 million annual in funding. Again, historically, this has been funded. This year was an off year. And it supports about 3 programs across the United States for supporting commercial fishing and increasing commercial fishing capacity. Our region hasn't historically been competitive for this, but it's a great opportunity to build capacity and opportunities for fishers. I know Alaska, California, the East Coast have all competed well for this funding opportunity. And then just recently, NOAA National Fish Habitat released their funding call for proposals. The deadline's May 20th, 2026, and that's up to $75,000. No matching required to engage recreational fishing partners in restoration. So there could be opportunities to apply for this for fishers and organizations looking to get more fishers involved, educated, or through workshops. So I couldn't find it online, but they sent us an email, so I'm happy to share that with anyone interested in that. And as of this week, I think yesterday I logged in and a bunch of new grant funding opportunities had just popped from USDA and a few others. So just something to think about. But those are four opportunities we just wanted to present, some of the big ones. And then I know Richard will talk a little bit more. In terms of our territorial partners, we do want to make sure you're aware of the SPC, which is the Pacific Community. They are a great resource for fishing training, commercial fishing, FAD setup and deployments, and capacity training. I've had a lot of communications with them. They produce a lot of great informational documents, and it's free. So for territorial partners, a great organization to reach out to. I believe there's some hierarchy and process. I think it probably has to go through our administrators with the fisheries agency to get some of the support. But again, something to push for and to request access for. I just went through a great book they produced. I've talked to them and they've sent a bunch of stuff about FAD setup and deployment and design that we've shared with our American Samoa partners looking to deploy some FADs. And so it's just a great opportunity as well because our territories are all part of the SPC and so can access those benefits. So then requirements to apply for grants, really, you do need a EIN or SAM.gov account. Richard or Clay can talk a little bit more about this. It's free with caveats. It's challenging and takes a while to get. Proposals range from short to long. A standard proposal can be 30 pages long, which is a lot of time, commitment, and energy. So making sure you have an idea that's worthy and valid is really important before you invest that time, but it shouldn't scare you. And then be able to manage the grant and money according to your plan. So what you put in the plan is where the money has to go. There's audits, reviews. So again, proper spending and tracking. You can't say the money is going to be spent on X and then you go spend it on Y. That just won't work and won't allow you to be competitive in the future for future grants. So just things to think about in terms of requirements and applying. And then just some advice. I've been working very briefly in the grant community the last couple of years with PIFG and a few others, and helping organizations take a look at funding opportunities. But I really think, even for myself, my first grant was $10,000. It felt small, but it was huge in terms of pushing us forward and what we were doing, interviewing fishermen and seeing their feedback on a product we were working on. That I'd say start with small funding and an idea, show success and seek larger funding and show you can grow a framework that's going to be sustainable and work. And then ultimately, really the goal in my mind, and this is different for others, and everyone has a different opinion, but is to try to build an enduring program framework that isn't going to require grant funding. Richard might be able to talk a little bit more about that with his current program, but grants meet different needs. Some are enduring, some can be used for a short period of time, and some lead to enduring programs and outcomes that really shape and change our fisheries. So that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Richard Yamada now. Let him take a brief time to introduce himself and share his presentation on our fisheries.
Hi all, I'm Richard Yamada, originally from Hawaii, raised in Kaneohe, and actually the Air Force brought me to Alaska and I never left since then. So I was raised around the water. My dad was a carpenter, but weekend fished out of Pokai Bay. We built our own Kauai sampan and fell in love with the ocean and did a lot of taco and just hand line fishing. So I grew up around the ocean, went to Alaska, and I was just so blown away by the resources up there that I decided to make that my home. So I've been in Alaska for almost 50 years. And so eventually I opened up a sport fishing lodge. Been doing that for about 45 years. And my son now runs it. So I got all this time to deal with grant writing and fisheries management. So you would think that Alaska wouldn't have its issues with abundance and fish and all of that, but it does. Different perspective. So uh, basically, I'm going to cover this grant writing from a, really 30,000 foot perspective. There's a lot of detail here that you can take this slide presentation and read all of the fine things. But basically, grant writing is a way to accomplish whether it's um, projects that will help your fishery, help your economy, help the resource, all these ideas that eventually, if you're on the water long enough, you see something that needs to be addressed, but you don't have the funds to do it by yourself. So you go and seek grants. So next slide. So this is basically what I said. So I've applied for several grants in the past 40 years of advocating for recreational fishermen. Basically, our fishery is divided into recreational and commercial. They're not synonymous as much in Hawaii as uh, that we wish we were, but there is a definite commercial fishery and a recreational fishery. And so the two fisheries compete for the resource. And so uh, uh, I, maybe next slide will explain the biggest project that I did that's taken me over um, uh, 12 years to accomplish this. So, the importance of commercial and recreational fisheries are huge, over $253 billion. Um, Government grants are kind of critical. It allows fishermen to get involved in making change in their fisheries. Next slide. You can read all these slides later. I'm just going to kind of go over the major points. So I think Alex mentioned these before. These are kind of major grant sources. NIFWF is the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. It's a coordination between um, uh, the NOAA and private foundations. BREP is the Bycatch Reduction Engineering Program. It's another big one. And they're mostly equipment related. Salt and Stall Kennedy, which is a very popular one, that do mostly promote marketing and science and technology. And then the one that this coastal habitat restoration is a big one that's recently got a lot of funding by the US government. And that's, the four major ones that I've worked with before in the past. Next slide. So I'll just talk a little bit more about this NIFRIF grant that I got back in 2012, just to give you an idea of how long these projects take. So in 2012, I applied for a grant to resolve an issue that we've been having. There's a commercial and recreational fishery, and the recreational fishery was always fighting for allocation or more allocation to prosecute our fishery. And there's only one pie, and the commercial fisheries at that time had the majority of it. And there was always a food fight at the council as to who would get, uh, for what reason, a bigger part of the pie. And so came up with the idea back in 2012 that we should get involved in catch shares, which I don't know if everybody understand that. That was kind of a hot topic back then. So the recreational fishery was never involved in catch shares before. And so came up with an idea that we could buy our way into the commercial fishery by um, buying by using a market-based approach to reallocate the fishery. So it started as an idea. NIFRA funded it because they were big into catch shares, and the idea was the first novel national approach using catch shares in the recreational fishery. So it really got funded because of that. And so, so we finished that project with a lengthy report that showed how we would go about doing it. Uh, and here we are, uh, over 14 years later, and we just got funded, found a funding mechanism. And so this year is going to be the first year that we actually have a halibut stamp where each angler that goes on a guided recreational trip pays $20 for. And all that money raised will be to buy quota from the commercial fishery and slowly reallocate that quota to the recreational sector so we can improve our bag limits. So just to give you an idea of how long some of these policy changes take, it's not doesn't happen overnight. So you need to, this is just one example of how a grant actually did kickstart an idea and it has come into fruition. It took an act of Congress, it took our council's meeting, did some negotiations with the commercial sectors. So everybody saw it benefit. To today, it's now been implemented. Next slide. So that's the next one. Okay, the bycatch reduction engineering. So this was a technological a funding source where we were having not problems, but we're regulated by size of fish that we can retain as far as halibut size, and so our size is getting smaller and smaller to the point where we have to release a lot of big halibut. Now, the only way we used to release them is you have to measure them. So you would bring this big, 100-pound halibut on the boat and then kind of measure them with a ruler, and then you throw them over the side of the boat. A lot of danger in handling the halibut. And then, if you grab the halibut the wrong way, the halibut might not survive. So it's a release mortality involved. So I developed the idea of measuring these halibut by just taking a picture of their head and extrapolating the length of the halibut. So you wouldn't have to bring the halibut in the vessel. By just taking a picture of the head, it'll measure the length of the halibut and give the angler a certificate of careful release. So you get the kudos of, what most fishermen want is the kudos of catching a big halibut, not necessarily eating one, because the beasts are very good on a big halibut. So anyway, that idea passed. So I did get a BREP grant. However, this is over 20 years ago. And so the technology today, our iPhones can do that. In those days, we didn't have iPhones that could do any measurements. So it was a proof of concept. Never got really adopted because right around the corner was iPhones that could do measurements. And so, but these are like creative ideas that you can kind of work at that resolves an issue in your fishery that are worth. These are the kinds of ideas that like this BREP can solve. The BREP is really more into like data collection, reducing mortality in the fishery somehow. Like using those barotrauma release devices, those are all like BREP type grants, or using color lights for fish avoidance in nets, that kind of anything that will reduce bycatch in the fishery. Next slide. Next slide.
I'm on SK now. Can you see that? Or is it lagging?
No, it must be a lag because I still see BREP.
Yeah, it says my internet's unstable. Give me a sec. Should catch up.
Oh,
Okay,
there you
that's
go.
good. So I just finished a SK grant, with $230,000 grant, 2 years in the making. uh, I discovered that uh, a couple, well, actually 5 or 6 years ago, that we were discovering or encountering a lot of squid in our area. And then through discussions with the local game biologist, he had a theory that these squid might be intercepting our juvenile king salmon going out to the ocean. And I was interested in finding answers to why our king salmon population was declining. And he said that most of the decline has come from at-sea survival between the rivers and the ocean. And so I embarked on this mission to determine why is there an interaction between squid and our king salmon. And um, there's no research or no fishery for squid in Alaska. Basically, 40 years ago, there was a big, huge foreign fleet fishery for squid in Alaska, and they were pushed offshore because of the Magnuson-Stevens Act, the 200-mile EEZ. And so since then, nobody picked up squid fishing because all the other fisheries were in their heyday: king salmon, king crab, pollock, all these other species. So nobody really cared about squid. So I embarked on this idea that, is squid really intercepting our juvenile king salmon? And sure enough, well, I applied for it, SK grant, actually twice, trying to um, get Japanese squid jigging machines to Alaska to see if I could catch the squid. And both times I was rejected. They didn't, their rationale was that, well, if you caught them, there's no market for this squid. Nobody eats squid in the United States, da 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 da. Da. So anyway, so finally I applied for the other half of the SK grant, which was marketing. And then lo and behold, I got funded to see if there is a market for this Alaska squid. And it's a species that really only exists in Alaska and Russia. So it's no research really been done on this squid. And so I got the grant and I did, a lot of marketing, went to Japan, uh, tested it with chefs. And after 2 years, we determined that there is a market for this very delicate species. So next slide. So getting back to writing proposals. So as I said, I failed 2 times, and then the third time I did get funded. There, um, each grant is a little bit different. So these are kind of some tips when usually the grants come up with an RFP, which is a request for proposal. And then there's some grants have like a preliminary proposal, like they want to, before you go writing a whole proposal, they have a preliminary proposal. So they kind of screen and then they tell you to submit a full proposal. And so you need to be sure that when you write your proposal, you're very specific, that you really address all the goals and purposes of that proposal, and that you're eligible. Like sometimes they only, have organizations or academic institutions, or, so there's some requirements. So go through all of that with a fine tooth comb before you go applying. But you can read the slide later. Next slide. So this again reiterates the fact that you need to understand the requirements very well before you go on. Next slide. Taking up too much time here. Okay, so you need to, in the competition, there is a lot of competition nationally. So the two things that go for Alaska and Hawaii is that we're very unique. You say Hawaii or you say Alaska, you get the attention of a lot of people that are funding these, because it's a unique environment. So you have topics that are exotic, and I think you got a foot up on the competition just because of that. but it needs to have elements of it that can be that other people can learn from. So if it's a policy thing that something you do that you can broaden the scope to a broader audience, that's always helpful. Um, so it helps you to, this is some steps that I listed here that you can go through and how you can, you need to understand your competition and position your proposal strategically. And I won't spend more time on that, but you can read the slide later. Next slide. So, good thing to know, not every grant gets funded. But you need to understand the rejection. And all these federal grants, they have to tell you why they didn't fund you. So go through, don't just give up because, as I said, I took me 3 times before I got my first SK. You need to know why your proposal wasn't strong. And I think the best way is to research who did get funded, what topics, and whether you can adjust your topical focus to meet and align with the RFP a little bit better. And that'll always ensure better success. So next slide. So again, every rejected proposal is a blueprint for your next winning proposal. And that's really true. As I said, that and Alex mentioned going for the smaller ones are good to just give you, like some practice in doing that. And that's a good idea. But some of them it really depends on your idea and how big the idea is. Next slide. So Alex mentioned some of these. I just won't go over them. These are just major sources of funding. Next slide. So this is kind of like the summary of everything. The fishing community has the knowledge, basically, and the grants provide the resources to act in this knowledge. And that's what if you need to identify an issue or problem, because you're not just doing these grants so you can go pay yourself as a grant writer or pay yourself as a PI or principal investigator. You have an issue that you want to deal with. So you have to have in your mind a clear solution to an issue. And then you'll be able to write a grant that or find a grant that aligns with what your mission statement, and then everything will kind of fall in place after that. But open to questions. I took up too much time already.
Awesome. Thanks, Richard. We're gonna really appreciate the great presentation and the background, and we'll make this available to everyone after as well. Thanks for your dedication and your hard work over decades of work in our fisheries in Alaska, and just the Hawaii connection is always really welcome. And thank you again for making the time. We're gonna move to Clay Tam to hear about his SK he did in 2023 to 2025, and then we're gonna open it up for questions at the end. But again, thanks, Richard, for that background and your hard work. So, uh, just a quick introduction for Clay, where Tam is the Director of Research at Pacific Island Fisheries Group. Is a very creative and innovative person as well, like Richard, looking to ways to advocate and support our fisheries throughout the Pacific Islands region. And so this is one of his projects he led that is really brought a lot of interesting opportunities beyond just Hawaii. And so I'm going to turn it over to Clay. Go for it, Clay.
Great, thank you, Alex. Hello, everyone. Great presentation, Richard. Looks like I don't have to do much on mine, but great coverage. And I think the message coming from Richard, I think all of us here have started with a small grant or not. And for us, it was at one time they had also the MET grant, which we had a number of to support our tagging project. Smaller grant, $10,000, but may not seem like a lot of money, but it has helped in a lot of situations. further grow some of our projects and infuse and build those projects in terms of creating short videos or materials to support our projects. Those kinds of things is really important. I think one of the smaller grants that we had when I at that level was something that supported a bigger venue was the our very own city and county grant, $10,000 grant for community work, and that's where we sort of uh, kickstarted our uh, fish and seafood festival 8 years in a running, and the 10,000 helped a lot initially to get the project off the ground and build funds and build it to where it was a 20 to 30,000 people event single day that occupied all of Pier 38 for 8 years, and Alex was a part of that. But you got to start somewhere, and I think that the message going forward is that we have agencies and we have uh, federal government and others that are in there, but a lot of times the focus is not where uh, we as fishermen see boots on the ground, or where there may be a need that is being overlooked, or it comes through a couple of different channels, and it may not be strictly for fishing, and it may be a combination of different interests and opportunities. And so, we've gone from research and now into some of this seafood promotion. And I think that always keep an open mind about when you apply and look for grants and see how your idea can fit. I think that's really important, especially like Richard said, when you apply for these different grants, they all have their calls, or they have their sort of list of what they are looking for. And so if you can, you know, have flexibility and working within those limits, then I think you'll be successful. And like Richard said, it's very rare where you're going to come out and hit one of those grants right off the bat. It's like, being a rookie in a professional baseball game and first pitch hitting a home run. It's just usually never happens. It's several times at bat and getting yourself ready. And um, that is true. I mean, a lot of our grants have been sort of recycled. And one of the things that we learned a lot from too is, like Richard said, looking at what projects were successful. And for us, we always request um, sort of a review from those who have put eyes on the grant initially to see where we can strengthen the grants, because they'll tell you right off the bat what's missing or what they're looking for. And so that helps the process overall, that we know what they're looking for. And so that helps us build that into the next grant, the next time. And it's like, we don't throw away any of the grants. We put them on the shelf, and the opportunity of having a shovel ready grant anytime it's like building your portfolio. Those things can be recycled if the call is right, or if there is the ability and direction to move. I think that's important too. And so I think a lot of these grants help fulfill a lot of the um, regional areas, especially like Richard said, Hawaii, Alaska is very unique, and that we've gone and done stuff from research to surveys all the way now to doing this project I'll talk briefly about, which was this of getting fresh fish into the local schools. And it started with the colleges mainly, involved the high schools. And what kind of kicked off this project was an opportunity. We personally had traveled to Japan and went on this tour where it was a catch and eat tour, and it was really neat because we got to actually eat the fish we caught. And through that effort, this was the idea we built on, and trying to promote seafood. And I think looking at it from the higher level, like Richard said, Richard had got me involved on and got me a seat on the MAFAC committee, the National Committee on Seafood. And um, you know, these are really different areas, and getting to talk to these people really open up ideas and um, opportunities, and that you're exposed to different concepts and ideas within the fishery on all different levels. And that really helps move the project when you think about sort of from the global perspective. And so this project came up because of our travel, actually. And the need for getting we found out, at least in Hawaii, that Hawaii's been the ag department has been more or less in charge of food programs and what we have here. And unfortunately, the largest producer of protein was never listed. For the culinary arts programs, we found out what they consider protein is eggs because it's available, it's farmed and grown, but they never looked at fishery. And then the other thing, once we started talking to the professors and those in charge of these programs, it was like, well, we can't afford it. And yeah, you don't blame them because it's like, bottom fish especially and tuna at the certain time of the year just out of the price of the getting into classrooms. It just won't work. And so knowing that and having the ability to look forward in that, these young guys going through the programs and coming up the line, if they don't partake or work with fish, they won't learn much and they won't be able to be productive in promoting fish products once they get out of the college. As one of the culinary art uh, head teachers had said, if they don't work with bottom fish or fish in the classrooms, it's probably up to 3 years before they actually touch fish in the real world at a restaurant, just because they don't have the skill. And so um, that's what kind of brought this project along in terms of one, getting fish into the classrooms. And the other thing about these projects is always having the ability or network to get it to work. I think that having industry, having markets, having um, the school programs and thinking outside of the box in terms of helping, your art community move forward and in the future of that, because those things become very important as we move and continue to fish. Um, Along the way, if fish is a demand, you have, all the other stuff that comes to mind in terms of, uh, building products and looking at, diversified opportunities in terms of marketing, shipping, um, even for species that are uh, either not recognized or underrated in the fishery, because um, I think there's huge opportunities where we can get that off the ground and also help our fishermen out in that area. I mean, our theory has always been start small. You can always create a pilot project and build on it. And many of our projects, including this one, is two consecutive grants in a row, which ran 2 years each. Oh, yeah, the one was extended, but from 2023 to 2024, and then from 2024 to 2025. And so this was unique in a sense that we were able to um, create the first step, which was networking the classrooms, the colleges, the high schools with food distribution in terms of finding a source that was reliable, could process fish, get into classrooms at a reasonable price, delivered when it was needed. And so um, that was a great fit for us. And then we also were fortunate to have interest from the Japan side of this to bring and introduce something outside of the box, in the sense that there was interest in terms of the chef that we met, Chef Sudo, who has his own restaurant and has worked with youth in Japan. In fact, his students have done outstanding work and have produced and ranked in top contests in Japan. And so he, in particular, was very interested in supporting, and we were fortunate that timing worked out and we were able to work with him to bring and introduce products from Japan in the classrooms here, along with some of their um, uh, fish and fish products, rice in particular. I mean, it's a big thing when you talk about just simple steps like just washing rice is a huge, um, I guess, interest and understanding about how important that basic dish is in terms of doing it properly, cooking it properly, and getting it to the level to support the finer cuisines. But definitely, that was a huge opportunity in expanding the programs in the first year. And fortunately, um, going on to the second year, we did something similar, but this time the Japan group out of Yamagata was interested in promoting a certificate for the students. And so they came, the students, it was outside, out of the SK, but it was also, in a huge introduction for our local kids here to experience something from across the ocean. And for me personally, it brought home memories of being my dad was in the Rotary Club, and I was part of a student exchange where we spent 10 days living with the host family in Chiba. And it's a total cultural experience. And with that in mind, and having been able to, work with the Japanese fish out there with them, and learn was really important. And I think that what came out of that was eventually, I believe, Leeward Community College was so inspired, and these guys were so open that they had raised funds to go over to Japan. They take the class over there and learn from Chef Suda for a number of days at his restaurant. And so, when you look at the accomplishments of the project, it was just not only the exposure to seafood, but it blossomed into something bigger in terms of opportunities. And a lot of these projects will do that. And much of these projects can be done outside of Hawaii, for the region and other places where you may have this opportunity or this uniqueness that I think can help provide for your community. And as you can see, you had, it was basically with the Hawaii Culinary Arts Program from Kauai. We had Kapilani Leeward. We did competition, in classroom training. The community college was great. It was great to have them on board, put fish into those classrooms, and yet get them inspired and being able to work on it. And so you can see uh, that on the bottom, they ended up 56, college culinary arts students received master sushi certificates, master sushi chef from the master sushi chef from Japan. And so, all of this was just part of the flow that we went through to, not only promote fish, but opportunity to expose and get our students off island to see other opportunities is huge. I mean, um, and I think that that program will hopefully continue some levels, some places. It's been unfortunate with the existing administration. The SK has kind of hit a roadblock or stumbling stone right now, but I think should it get up to par again, I think these are huge opportunities that exist where we can get our own communities involved in fishery. I mean, growing up as a small kid and with my bamboo pole catching fish, I mean, cooking and cleaning fish was, something that you grew up with. But to see some of the students in the classroom just cleaning a small goldfish or something was like, you don't realize what you know people don't know, because it's like some of these students come from off island, they come from families that don't fish. And so but if they have the opportunity to use and can work with fish and promote fish, it's all good for all of us in terms of the fishery. I think to support the fishery itself, because that's one of the things that you hear now is that Trump has been very supportive of opening up fisheries, trying to create more opportunity in terms of commerce and opening up fisheries. So, I encourage you to look around you. I mean, there's things out there that I think that can be done, and there's great opportunities to do it. The other thing I think that really help is, again, having sort of a network of people to work with. I know at one time they required letters of support, but they did away with that. They required more. They had letters, but it was the intent to work with those people, and I think that carries a lot of weight in terms of having those people on board. And again, having people from agencies like the Culinary Arts Program, college is great. We've done work with NOAA. Um, State, federal, it's all good because it helps the agencies help our community in terms of being able to um, engage with the community sort of. And our motto has always been, that fishermen should be part of the solution, not the problem. And I think that that has carried throughout our projects. And the other thing that I encourage for those out there who have not taken a grant writing class, if they ever continue the SK1, sign up. It's well worth the time for you to sit in and learn about how to write these grants, because it's not only for the SK, but grant writing opportunity. If you can write grants, you can go to a lot of different places. And we've been fortunate so far that we had um, two people resent out of PIFG to these grant writing classes, and one was Alex, and another one was that came in Bryce Noy that came in resent into class. And luckily, the first grants they wrote got accepted, which was a great opportunity and um, help for us in terms of broadening again, expanding in terms of the opportunities and getting you know involved more in our fisheries. But with that said, that's kind of our project in a nutshell. But we've done several of these, and talking to Richard, I mean, having the ability to work and talk to others that have been working with grants is important too. So I think I got most of it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Clay. Appreciate that great presentation and fortunate enough to be a part of the tail end of it with Pacific Island Fisheries Group. Just to see the joy on the students' faces and to work with the chefs to really utilize local as well as sashimi grade fish, which they couldn't get otherwise, was just really inspiring, and everyone left happy and fed after as well. So no complaints there. Thank you for doing that for our community. I don't think it was on the slide, but I know there was thousands of pounds of fish that was procured and went into the schools. And I know you focus more on the community colleges, but the impact on the high school culinary programs is huge. So thanks for that hard work. So kind of in wrap up, what you heard today was what grants are, where to find them, some examples of funding sources and successful projects from Richard and Clay, and then really just kind of the overview of this structure in this world we live in. I did hear from Hideo, who is our NOAA grants manager for the region, that they are going to announce a Salt Install Kennedy FY27, which would be September 2027 grant opportunity shortly. So that's the big one. We're hoping it is going to be able to fill the needs and that you are a little more knowledgeable about what exists out there, can help support projects or run projects or apply for funding that benefits fishermen in your local area. So one final piece, USDA, this is a big announcement. USDA just created the Office of Seafood. Check that out on the website, on the internet. There's a email. You can email them and tell them about your ideas and issues and concerns. I'm sure they would love to hear from you. And I think a lot of voices from fishers. This is going to open up funding to the fishing community that has historically only been for the farming and agriculture sector. So we are really excited about this. And this, again, like looking to the horizon, there is a lot of opportunity to meet the fishing community's needs and gaps that have existed for decades, and systemic issues. So think about the projects that make huge impacts and support your communities, and serve everyone, and look for these funding opportunities. So that being said, feel free to reach out to Clay or myself at pacificfisheries@gmail.com. I do want to stop the recording and offer a chance for any questions or comments that might come up, or anyone who might have any comments, or thanks to Clay and Richard again for spending their time this afternoon speaking with all of us and sharing their wisdom and experience. And I think that's kind of similar to on the water fisheries and fishing is, wisdom gets passed down, and it's oftentimes hard to earn. So we're grateful for Richard and Clay to helping move us all along ourselves. So if there's any questions, please, if you can't raise your hand, just unmute and then come on video, and let me know your question. Fakukoa Levy, go for it.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing with us. I really appreciate it. Especially like all of the experience that you have in this particular sector and yeah, thank you so much. But my question for the grant writing, it would be when it comes down to putting the proposal together for uh the budget, is that always like an exact number? Because I feel like when you're running that project, um, certain items might change in value depending on like how the project is running. How do you overcome something like that?
I can give a stab at that. So they give you a 10% in the budgets, at least South and Kennedy. 10% we can move line items around. Uh, so you have some leeway, as well as trying to budget, a miscellaneous category in your budget, like most grants do. But they realize that, everything's not going to be to the penny. So I've used that 10% quite a bit where, I didn't use money in one area, one line item, and I was shifted into the other ones up to 10%. I think it'd be shifted between line items.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and one comment too to that is that I normally when we put it together a grant, we usually do a pretty thorough budget upfront just to put us in a ballpark because if it gets to be accepted, you're gonna have to go there anyway. And like Richard said, you don't want shortfalls. They have an outline where they have a template and you put in for travel and all the you know, cost of the overhead, the principals, the supplies, and all that. So you have distinct columns that are already there that you can grab and put ideas and put numbers to them. That's pretty important because you really don't want to undersell the project too at that point because um, it's important to have a pretty decent number. Again, like Richard said, maybe not down to the pennies, but definitely have something doable for the project, yeah, and to get it off the ground. And usually they have a budget limit of X amount per year or whatever it is. And so as long as you can stay below that budget, you'll be okay. Thanks.
In the same token, they want you to spend all the money. They don't want any
I
left, they don't want any
I
leftover money. So you got to be very careful as to, as you're getting close to the end of the project, where you can actually expend all the funds. And there's, like restrictions as to how you can spend them, but yeah, it's budget management, but be sure to budget as close as you can to the line items. And the line items are really big. I mean, like they're not really, there's only like maybe 10 categories or something. They're not like some grants that I've worked in, in the private sector. I mean, it's down to like how much you're going to spend on pencils, it's not like that. It's very big categories.
I
So
gotcha. I appreciate so 10% deviation on line items and make sure you spend all the money. And I completely understand that. I was also Air Force, so I know of that end of quarter trying to get as much stuff in as possible
yeah.
before it ends.
Awesome. Thanks for that question, Fakakoa. Any other questions or comments before we can stay on a few more minutes, but I know to be respectful of everyone's time. You got a question, go for it.
Oh, I had just a quick question about I guess um would projects that fall more under the sphere of like aquaculture, like fish farming, fall under more of those agriculture grants? Or I just was curious because I know it does intersect into obviously the fisheries if you're farming fish on the side. I was just curious if that is pretty securely in the other sphere of grants for like more agriculture based programs and stuff like that.
I'll take this one real quick. So SK, the last round had quite a few agriculture or aquaculture projects on it that were funded. So it does depend on the RFP and the call, but they are in the same vein oftentimes. Awesome. Let's take Richard or Clay if you have anything to add to that. If
I
not,
think, popular topics these days is aquaculture and mariculture. For Alaska, it would never be popular to do any kind of fish farming because we have so much wild stock. But mariculture, I mean, like raising clams, oysters, gray ducks, seaweed, those are really big investment item. I think the key is trying to increase our exports. And I think we import 80 to 90% of all our seafood. So the administration right now is on this mission to increase the value of our seafoods and export. Uh, so, but with each one of these, there comes some problems. I would say I've been watching, in Alaska, seaweed development because that's something that is, we have a long summer, fast growing seaweed, but they have problems with shipping, the cost, the dehydration, just there's the infrastructure. There's no dehydration plants. So you need to look at your grant like all the way through, not just, oh, I can grow seaweed, but what I'm going to do with the seaweed after I grow all this seaweed. How is it going to get to market? What's the infrastructure involved in doing that? So we have a company in where I live that buys all kinds of seaweed from private vendors, but they got to make their own products because there's no way they can, they do everything with the seaweed, but they have to open up their own factories, their own, the infrastructure is not there for all the items. So look at your grant, not only in like a lot of my grants, like the squid grant, got a market, but can I catch enough squid to meet the market demand? So I'm in the production phase right now this summer, using jigging machines and see what the CPUE is going to be, so I can see if I can meet the market demand. But where am I going to get the money for that? I mean, is it private capital? So I'm right now looking at, federal money, but also private investment. So you got to look at the total picture. How are you going to get this project actually implemented? So I think the federal funds are really good to kind of kickstart it, proof of concept, kind of let you do the research and get really some professional help in doing that. And then, but you need to eventually in your mind, if you want to accomplish a lot of these, it's okay, how do I get, like if you want to do something in fisheries and you want to say, you know, raise blue lobsters, Hawaii, who's going to be market? Where are you going to raise it? How are you going to get that? What's the supply chain like? Do you have, everything has to be studied. So that's also important. So take a big picture and how are you going to scale up from a small pilot project?
Awesome. Thanks for that feedback
Thank you.
and good question. Any other final questions? It's 1:03 right now, so I want to give, or 1:06, so I want to get everyone going with the rest of their day. Again, thank you, Richard and Clay, for the opportunity. If there's one more question, we'll take that and then we'll conclude.
No, I just wanted to say one thing. I just wanted to thank Alex for the invite and Richard and Clay for your information. Yeah, really grateful. Thank you.
Lindsay. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you all for your time. It was good to see everyone. Please reach out if you need anything, and then we'll make this recording available to everyone who registered and send that out. But thanks for coming. Appreciate the time and hope to see you all soon. Take care.
Yeah, God bless.
Oh, thank you guys.
All right.
you.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you all. Take care.
Right on, Alex.
See you, Lindsay.